All right, welcome to the Midnight Watch. I'm Eric Gilbert, and tonight we'll be starting a discussion regarding government continuity during times of national turmoil and upheaval. Well, but before we get started, I'm going to need you to do me a small favor and just hit all the buttons if you would, please. Hit those like and share buttons and hit that subscribe button. Let's build this channel up and kind of make it a thing, if you would. This is all brand new. I'm actually very excited about this and a little disappointed at the same time because this has been one heck of a project getting all this put together. I am not a techie person, so doing this all myself has been a challenge. And you'll probably notice, I don't know, some discrepancies here and there as we go along, but we'll get all that worked out eventually. One of those things is probably my intro music not tuning down a little bit when I speak. That was supposed to be pre-programmed, but we'll wait. I got all night. I guess it's not going to stop. We'll go ahead and stop it manually then. And let's go ahead and do this. There we go. All right. Way to start off. Looking real professional there. Okay. So tonight, I want to start off my brand new live streams by talking about government continuity. What made me think of this, right? Where and how far are we going to go with the subject? I'm absolutely certain we're going to be talking about this for at least a couple of nights. So let me start here. I've been thinking about a lot of things for just years now, about just what would become of the U.S. if something were to happen that led to a wide or large scale level of government accountability, right? What does that mean? So let's take current events, right? I know, as I said, I've been thinking about several things for a number of years, but what really has me triggered, if you will, at the moment is everybody's favorite topic of the day, the Epstein files, right? Big issue. And everybody's concerned about whose name is on the list in those emails. I know a bunch of pages have come out. No, I have not done any research in terms of actually obtaining any of that. I know it's out there, so I haven't read it. I don't specifically know myself what's already been displayed, what's been redacted or anything, but there are a couple of content creators who I follow regularly, and I'm not going to give any opinions on that at the moment based on the fact that I haven't personally read it. What I'm talking about tonight, though, is one of what if, the what if isms, I guess, that we all get struggling with in our minds about what happens if, right? So what happens if everybody's suggesting who they believe might be on that list? And mostly our concerns would be with politicians, say judges, lawyers, higher or lower level law enforcement, and whoever. We can actually assume, we can count on possibly, Hollywood stars and TV stars and musicians and probably some sports stars of any numbers being on the list, and what anybody with big money might be on this list, right? But what we're concerned about is our politicians and what does this country look like? Now, we've all seen all the movies of what happens excuse me, in the U.S. when, say, natural disaster strikes and, I don't know, maybe a massive earthquake hits Washington and half of Washington goes underground, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and get neck deep in trouble right off the gate, right out of the gate on my new channel here, because I really want to talk about this, and I want to discuss, like I said, government continuity first. And we may spend a couple of days on this, and then, yes, I want to discuss these files, these Epstein files, to the best of my ability and knowledge of the subject once I get my hands on whatever I feel I need in order to have a reasonable discussion about that. But until I get my hands on certain things, let's go with this first. Let's do the what if isms of. So where do we go from here? Let's look. Since I like to try to keep things Bible based, right? I want to talk about world events, current events in our country, and what have you. But as a Christian, as a professing Christian, I want to talk about these things from a biblical worldview. And immediately upon saying that, I can almost see the eye rolls and a bunch of, deep sighs. Oh, God, here we go. He's another one of those. He's probably MAGA or whatever. Listen, I've been telling people for years, there is something about every aspect of life in this book that we call the Bible, right? There's nothing that we can't touch on in this life that isn't covered in this book by way of, encouragement or God telling us how to deal with things, having the faith to let God deal with certain things and just trust that he will and what have you. So tonight we're just going to look at just a few verses. When I looked this up, because I wanted to get a bunch of verses all at once, so I did some Googling. What does the Bible have to say about bad government, right? So immediately it took me to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 23, and it says, "Your princes are rebels and companions of thieves. Everyone loves a bribe and runs after gifts. They do not bring justice to the fatherless, and the widow's cause does not come to them." And then you go immediately over to Isaiah 10:1, where it says, "Woe to those who decree iniquitous decrees, and the writers who keep writing oppression." Proverbs 28:15, "Like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked ruler over a poor people." Ezekiel 22:27, "Her princes in her midst are like wolves tearing the prey, shedding blood, destroying lives to get dishonest gain." And then, of course, my last one here, and there's many more, but I just took a handful because got a lot to go on here. I got a lot of notes. So 1 John 15, "We know that we are from God." Believers, this verse is talking about believers. "We know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one." What does 1 John 5:19 mean? Now I want to do something kind of nifty here. This is something I've been trying for almost a year and a half to do. I know anybody who's been following me on my live streams on Facebook heard me complain a number of times about how my screen sharing button disappeared on Facebook. I couldn't share anything, and that was a big disappointment because I wanted to be able to do that. And so even though this verse is pretty simple to understand, I'm going to go ahead and do something tonight. I'm going to screen share, and I hope you're actually seeing this because this is an all new setup for me. So I hope you're actually seeing now what I'm seeing here. So in verse 19, if you can see my cursor there, and we know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness. Now, I'm just going to do a little thing here, even though I'm sure I don't have to tonight. And we're going to go here to lieth, right? We're going to look this up since it's New Testament in the Greek, right? And this is what the Greek has to say. Now, this is not the exact it's not the exact Bible app that I had on my live streams before. This is a different one, but it still has the Strong's Concordance on it. This is what I had been wanting to do for you guys for, like I said, almost a year and a half. And I'm just doing this tonight because I'm real excited to be able to have this ability to do this. So anyway, as you can see from the blow up here, that it just simply means to lieth with wickedness. So to lie, as of an infant, or one buried, or of things that quietly cover some spot, of a city situated on a hill, of things put or set in a place, to which we often use to stand, and so on. You can read everything that I can read, so you can see what I'm looking at here, of laws to be made laid down. So basically, this is saying they made their bed with wickedness, okay? I'm sure we've all heard the old saying, you made your bed, lay in it. We're talking about the wickedness of a government that has made its bed with wickedness, and they lie with it, okay? So, and I'm just going to go ahead and pop this up here so we understand the fullness of the word wickedness from a biblical perspective. I'm going to let you go ahead and look at that while I talk. So, what does John 5:19 mean? 1 John 5:19. What does that mean? Both John and his readers know that we are from God. Though it is true, believers are created in God's image. The context indicates the idea of salvation or being born again. So believers are children of God and are from God spiritually and relationally. Let's go back here. Okay, so let me stop there real quick and just throw my little extra in there. Okay, I have heard so many countless people say for so many years. Even Christians love to use this saying that we're all God's children, right? And I have just had to correct for too many years that no, we are not all God's children. We are all God's creation. Okay, we are all God's creation, and yes, God loves the world. For God so loved the world, the whole world, that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. But until you reach that moment, Jesus told Nicodemus, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven unless you've been born again. And so anyway, we're talking in this verse about believers, children of God, okay? And John again notes that Satan has spiritual control over the entire world. Now, we've talked about this on my live streams when I was doing them on Facebook, okay? The spiritual control over this world, the dominion that evil has over this world, it was a power transfer from humanity to the demonic realm at the Garden of Eden. When man disobeyed God and the fellowship between God and man was broken, there was a power transfer because man was given dominion here by God Himself. We were given dominion. This was intended to be our utopia. And Adam was given permission to name all the animals, all the fruits and vegetables, the spices, the grass, the trees, name it all, play with all the animals, do what you want. It's all yours. Just fellowship with me, spend time with me every day. And God came to man in the garden every day and walked with him every day, right? But when that fellowship was broken, okay, there was a power transfer. And this is, if that hadn't happened, would the devil still be here? Yes, he would still be here. He was banished here. And the power that he would possess over this world would be extremely limited if we had maintained our dominion. We ruled here. But that power shifted. Okay, so John again notes that Satan has spiritual control over the entire world. John has already noted that the believers he is writing to have overcome the evil one in 1 John chapter 2, mentioning Satan as the evil one also in 1 John chapter 3 and 1 John 5. This letter has also spoken previously of the power of the world. Jesus prayed to the Father to keep believers from Satan, to protect them. Right? Believers are to use the armor of God against the evil one. Ephesians 6:16. I encourage you, I implore you as believers, read that, learn it, love it, and live it. This is our strength, right? The armor, the full armor of God. This is what God set aside for us. This is part of the whole process of God bridging the gap to help rebuild that fellowship that was broken back in the garden. But we need that armor to protect us from the wiles of the devil, right? So Ephesians chapter 6, and knowing God will guard us against the wicked one, right? In 2 Thessalonians 3. The world is also mentioned in the first chapter of the Gospel of John as something created by Jesus and from which he takes away the sins, right? So note, I'm just going to give you a little note here. I've been relaying for years how the Bible expressly informs us that this world is in fact the devil's dominion. For now, we as Christians have come to understand this, and the rest of the world goes on believing that there is no God, and they go on raging against the machine, if you will, right? The battle for justice, true, genuine justice, will be ongoing until that day when Jesus returns and makes that correction. So now, it sounds temporarily like I'm just rambling on, and how in the world does any of this have to do with government continuity? But until we understand that we are under the power and the influence of the wicked one, this is his domain. Until you understand that, you don't even begin to fathom the level of the battle we have in front of us. And unfortunately, very sadly, many believers don't even fully grasp the level, the depth of the battle we're actually in every day. Everything is spiritual. I've been saying this for years. I said it I don't know how many times when I was doing live streams on Facebook. Everything is spiritual. This world does in fact belong to the devil. Now, is God ultimately in control? He absolutely is. Because if he wasn't, we'd all have been done away with a long time ago. The devil despises us. He does not want us to exist. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't even have anything to do with us. Yes, the devil hates us. Yes, the devil would love to kill us all. But it isn't even about us. It's because God loves us. We are his prized creation. We were created in his image. Okay? Excuse me. Not even the angels and the beasts of heaven were really created in God's image. He created mankind in his own image. And we're like the apple of his eye. And the devil despises us so greatly, but he despises God even more for making us. The inferiority of humanity compared to the spirit realm just gnaws at Lucifer, right? And he wants to destroy us, but in destroying us, he knows that that's just stabbing God in the heart, and that's inevitably what he wants to do over and over and over again. So how does that have anything to do with what I really want to talk about tonight? And we're going to continue and move on into that subject matter. But again, until we understand just exactly where we're at in the universe, then we don't fully understand the depth of the battle we're in on a daily basis. Every time you wake up and open your eyes and put your feet on the floor, that's the time to put on your armor and get prepared for the day, because sufficient unto the day are the evils thereof. The wickedness of this world exists, and you're in it neck deep the moment you wake up every day. So, and we'll talk about more about that as time goes on. But getting back on track here, let's go ahead and get back on track. So, what exactly does a country look like? The U.S. What does the U.S. look like if the majority of our government officials go under from a natural disaster or corruption? Again, talking about the latest upheaval, which would be the Epstein files. So what happens if, say, half or 3/4 of the federal government is on that list? What happens? This is an interesting topic for me because I know we've seen all the movies, right? I brought that up a moment ago. And I know I can't be the only one wondering what exactly does happen in real time. Not in movie scenarios, but in real time if our current governing body goes down for any reason. And since the Epstein files are, in fact, the hot topic right now, let's investigate the possibilities. So if a huge portion of Washington were suddenly indicted, what happens? Everyone believes there are many countless names on this list, from government officials to judges, lawyers, law enforcement, so on, right? The list could actually be endless. We don't know. Okay? If, hypothetically, a massive number of high-ranking officials, judges, and other public figures were all exposed and charged all at once, it would indeed be chaotic at best. But the country would not collapse. Maybe, right? The U.S. government is designed with multiple layers of continuity and redundancies specifically for moments like this. Okay? The system doesn't remove everyone overnight. That would be virtually impossible, okay? Because even if dozens or even hundreds of names were exposed, investigations take time. Grand jury indictments take time. Due process applies to every single person, right? Not just the average Joe because, hey, we got a constitution. It applies to everyone. Okay, so people are not removed from office instantly. And as frustrating as that can be, right? Now, I've actually said in times past, maybe it is time that we just scrap our federal government and start over again. And I've also said we got to be careful what we wish for because we might just get it. And we don't really know the depth of what something like that can do to a nation. There might be contingency plans put in place, but the disaster of something like that, the fallout from something like that would be huge. And we're going to talk about all that. So, and again, we might even be on this a couple of nights. I don't know. Excuse me. So the system is staggered. There are no instant removals, right? And again, I say, I know that would be frustrating because if there are, I don't care if there's one federal official's name on that list or all of them. Okay, it doesn't matter. We want to see justice done, especially from those who have been elected as our public official representatives. These people represent not only us as the people, first and foremost, but they represent us as a country to the world. So, if something were to happen and just a mass number of names show up on this list, the system is staggered. So there are no instant removals, and that alone prevents a sudden power vacuum. Okay, so continuity of government steps in. The U.S. has an entire framework called continuity of government, or the COG, created for scenarios like this: catastrophic events, or catastrophic. Let me get a hold of myself here. Catastrophic attacks, mass incapacitation of leaders, nuclear events, mass arrests, coups. Right. So let's look at this. The decapitation of the federal government. It includes presidential line of succession, emergency powers, temporary appointments, emergency courts and judges, state governments as fallback systems, and the military's role. And this is one of the things, probably it's further down the list here, but it's actually probably one of the things that are almost top priority when it comes to the average American person. Like, we don't want the military running our streets. Excuse me. And we're seeing that discussion or argument, if you will, online every day now over, National Guard roaming D.C. and various other places in the country, right? So the people become very upset by this. We don't want military personnel roaming the streets of our country, and yet, and I'm going to stop in my notes here and just throw in some thoughts, right? Because we're very, I'm not sure what the word is I want to use. I don't know. I don't want to go so deep right now as to use the word hypocrites because, inevitably that word will come into play. we just, we don't understand what fully it is that we want or need as a people, right? Which is largely why we have the system that we have to elect representatives. And these people are supposed to be the smart ones to be able to represent us in those areas and give us what we need and what we want, right? It's not that we're not smart, but these people are supposed to be the ones who spent the years in college learning all this political stuff and, being able to play this game the way they're supposed to. And when that doesn't happen right, or when people take advantage of their so-called power, and then we're talking about having the military running things right. So the military's role in these kind of scenarios is not political. So let me just say that. It's not political. Like right now, everybody's enraged about the National Guard being on the streets of D.C. and some other areas, right? And their areas, first of all, is not political. They're not running the country. They're not running D.C. They're not running Oregon or wherever else they're being placed. They're not running political operations, okay? They are there for stabilization purposes only and to assist law enforcement, okay? Now, the arguments to be had about what's actually transpiring is not what we're talking about tonight. We're just simply laying out the protocols that are actually in place in this country should something catastrophic take place with our federal government. Okay? I actually started this. This is a very odd place for me to start my very first comeback tour, if you will, of my live streams, but it's just something that's been on my mind for years, and I spent, I don't know, a couple of weeks trying to figure out where I really wanted to go with my first re-upping of my live streams, and I don't know. I just thought, here's a place to go. The Epstein Files is this hot topic right now. What happens if our government, just absolutely crumbles? All right, so let's go there. So this system is rehearsed constantly by federal agencies, right? What system? The continuity of government. These protocols are rehearsed constantly. There's always somebody ready to step in. So presidential succession is very deep. If half of Congress, wow, I cannot talk tonight. If half of Congress vanished or was arrested, the line of succession still includes the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tempore of Senate, Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and so on, through 15 cabinet officials. So even if several were implicated, the line is so long that it's long enough a clean official would be found. Nobody said perfect, just clean, by whatever standards are necessary to fill those empty seats. So vacancies are filled very fast. This is where people underestimate how prepared the system actually is. And I don't, and again, I'll break from my notes all the time because I want to make a program out of this. But, we don't really fully pay attention to what's actually, not only what actually is happening, the details of that. One of the biggest issues that I have, especially, certain apps, I'm not even sure what I'm allowed to say on YouTube. This is new to me. I know there's a lot of things you can't say on TikTok and what have you, but whatever. Yeah, I'll move past that. Okay, so the president or the acting president can appoint replacement senators temporarily, nominate cabinet replacements, fill vacant roles with acting officials, swear in new federal judges, use emergency confirmation process, rely on state governments for support. And even if Congress was gutted, states can immediately send temporary senators to refill the Senate. So governance continues, okay? Courts also have succession and backup. Even if some judges were implicated, thousands of federal judges exist. Magistrate judges assist. Senior judges come out of retirement. Emergency courts can be set up. Appeals courts redistribute caseloads. And the judicial system does not stop. The military does not take over. I have to express that at least more than once because, again, people just automatically become, excuse me, emotionally charged when anything happens. And the first thing everybody wants to do is run immediately to the internet and express their internet profession, by way of opinion. Everybody becomes a professional in constitutional law or just law, regular law, Supreme Court, being a cop, whatever the case may be. Everybody's all of a sudden a professional. Everyone's a doctor. Everyone's a nurse. I've said many times over the years, I think very often that the internet, giving the internet to the general public was probably a mistake. It really was. It just gave an outlet to far too many people. It really did, who probably don't need an outlet. And it's probably not a fair thing to say because everybody's entitled to their opinion, but wow, right? Well, you open any one of these social media apps and just start looking at the content of things that get said, and it's just pure insanity sometimes. But so people often think that military takeovers would happen in the event of something catastrophic with the government, but the military is just simply there to stabilize and to assist law enforcement, right? So this ensures. Well, I'm sorry, they're there to not only protect the infrastructure, but to ensure that communication networks are in place and still functioning. Excuse me, they're here to guard strategic assets. And they do not take political control. We do not become some sort of a guerrilla state, okay? It doesn't happen. Now, there have been times when things that we, the people, would consider questionable, like during, just for the sake of discussion, right? Again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a judge, but just for the sake of discussion, let's talk about very briefly about Katrina. During Katrina, National Guard members did in fact, and I've been told many times that never happened. It did happen. It's documented. That National Guard members were going house to house, collecting people's guns, kicking people out of their houses, like forcibly removing people from their homes, and all kinds of things. And people said that never happened. And it did happen, though. In fact, that was one of the first things that was set aside when the National Guard was sent down there. Certain, I don't know how large of a group was sent out to do this, but I do know that there was a group of National Guardsmen whose sole purpose was to go house to house and just collect up people's guns. And a majority of them, nobody knows where they went to. And when people went later on to try to petition, law enforcement, judges, or whomever, like, where did my stuff go? Just poof, gone, right? So that was an issue of contention with the American people, and rightfully so. So this is where, I wanted to talk about this, but we have to be realistic about what transpires when moments like this take place, whether it's natural disaster, corruption, or anything else. When things take place, there's going to be things to happen that aren't going to make us happy, and one of the things that we can't do is run right off into the streets and act a fool. The first thing everybody wants to do is wrap a black T-shirt around their face and put on some plastic-coated knuckle gloves and go running after law enforcement in the streets, with cardboard signs stapled to sticks and shouting for justice and throwing bottles and all kinds of stuff and just all kinds of nonsense in the streets. And we can't behave like that, because these are the kinds of things that don't actually accomplish anything other than to set the mood for things to escalate. All right. So again, we don't necessarily we don't become some sort of guerrilla state. The military does not take over political operations. They're just there to stabilize and assist. The Pentagon is legally barred from governing the country unless the president explicitly invokes some very specific and rare emergency powers. I'm not sure exactly how drastic things would have to be for the president to invoke those kinds of specific rare emergency powers, but I have to imagine like we'd have to be like darn near post-apocalyptic kind of existence or something before something like that would happen, and we're not near that. Not yet. Would it cause chaos? Would mass arrests and charges and just the seeming collapse of our government due to corruption, would that cause chaos? It absolutely would, right? Excuse me. But a collapse of our country? No, at least not in the movie sense, right? It makes for excellent Hollywood. It makes for excellent Hollywood, but not in the movie sense, right? So you'd see, for example, right off the bat, you would see market panic. As it always does when something happens, that raises questions or eyebrows. Anytime something takes place, it's going to affect the market. So how market panics unfold and why it hits so hard. So the trigger isn't financial, though. And this is something we all have to understand about once the market is impacted, right? What impacts the market and how does that behave, right? The trigger for the market isn't even a financial trigger when things happen. It's emotional. And I just hit on that, like just a second ago. I just hit on it. And over the last year and a half, I've talked about it several times on my other live streams. The emotionalism of humanity. Like, we have got to learn to get control of ourselves. Like, manage those emotions, right? Get yourself in check and start slowing down your heart rate, breathe, right? And think things through before we go running off half-cocked and do stupid things thinking we got the world by the tail on a downhill drag. So the trigger to the market during anything isn't even a financial trigger. It's an emotional trigger. In a national shock event, the economy doesn't collapse because of money. It collapses because of fear. The recent issue of tariffs could serve as an example of this. Fear strikes, and the market immediately responds with emotionalism. Heck, the entire country responded in complete emotionalism over these tariffs, right? And investors and regular people react the same way. What's happening? Is my money safe? Should I pull it out now? Right? And this becomes an issue. This is where if you want to use strong language like collapse, this is where your collapse would actually begin. Like the early stages of your collapse would begin is people doing crazy, nonsensical things because they don't think things through. They just act emotionally. So the emotional surge hits before any real economic damage occurs, and financial markets move at the speed of algorithms and headlines. Within minutes, you get stock sell-offs, crypto volatility, treasury bond swings, index drops, halted trading. It's not organized. It's herd behavior, and everyone sells because they think everyone else will sell. And panic spreads to regular people. Once the news spreads, everyday folks take their cue from the market, right? Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So when this is all right. So this is what it would look like at the early stages of panic setting in. Okay. People rush to ATM machines, right? The first thing everybody's going to want to do is yank out all their cash. And I, besides the fact that there is an ever growing population, right? And there's a number of factors for why certain things happen. And one of the things that I'm referring to is like how banks put limits on the amount of cash you can withdraw at an ATM, the amount of cash that you can spend in a day on your card. And if you need more, you have to call the bank and have that amount extended either for the day or for a week or even indefinitely. Hey, just raise my limit because I spend a lot of money, right? Whatever. But the first thing that happens in a panic, people rush to the ATM machines. They withdraw their cash, money transfers, immediately reduction in spending, right? Which makes that part actually makes sense. Okay, so when a panic a situation takes place, people immediately like, I'm not spending money. Got to hang on to the money and hope to God we've got everything we need. The problem, well, we're going to get into that in a minute. We'll talk about panic buying in a moment. All right, so reduction in spending. They begin to start canceling investments, right? And here we go. Panic buying essentials. Remember the panic buying during the pandemic? And I'm just going to stop here for a second. The panic buying during the 2 years or so of the pandemic was so ludicrous. During the entire period of that pandemic, it was so ludicrous that it got to the point where everybody was starting to say, hey, can we all just stop panic buying? There's nothing at the grocery store. And one of the things that, it's kind of comical to think about, but by the same token at the time, it was not just, it wasn't comical, it was actually aggravating. I don't know who told everybody during this pandemic period that it was the toilet paper you were going to need. Like people were constantly panic buying toilet paper for 2 solid years and stockpiling toilet paper. And when the toilet paper was running out, they started buying up all the napkins and paper towels. Like, I don't know exactly how you thought this pandemic was going to play out, but I'm absolutely certain you don't need that much toilet paper in your pantry at home or in your bathroom or wherever you keep your stuff, right? It was so ludicrous. So anyway, panic buying. Yeah, stop doing that. And you can say it a million times and people are still going to do it. Shelves get cleared out, the milk and bread goes. The hamburger can't be found, like just simple basic things like, the 96% hamburger that I like to buy here, right? Can't find it anywhere. Thank God we had a friend who was in a particular position to be able to assist us in making sure that we had toilet paper when we needed it, because we weren't going to be part of that nonsense. Our family wasn't. We weren't panic buying anything. In fact, God was so good to us, we didn't need to. Like there was not a time during that pandemic that we didn't have something that we needed. And I'm just very grateful for how God took care of us through all of that nonsense. But there is this fear that happens when terrible things take place, okay? And this is where fear becomes real world stress on a system. Because banks and supply chains feel the strain. And even a small cash withdrawal wave can stress banks. Not because banks are failing, and then immediately people want to get angry at the bank and start, cursing the bank like the bank did something wrong. But small cash withdrawals can even stress a bank when everybody's doing it. Not because banks are failing, but because ATMs can only hold so much cash at a time. Armored trucks run on schedules. They all have schedules. You know, it's not like they're hitting every store every single morning. They run on a schedule like everybody else. You know, branches are not stocked for panic. And I don't know why they ever would be. How would a bank be able to stock up for a panic anyway? How many customers or clients does one single bank branch have? Right? A lot. There's no way anybody could stockpile enough anything. A grocery store, a bank, or anybody else could stockpile enough anything for a mass panic buy. Online transfers spike, right? Meanwhile, and speaking of grocery stores, grocery stores get hit. Gas stations get lines. How many times do we see that? You know, I can't even begin to think. In my lifetime, I'm 54, and in my 54 years, I have seen a countless number of just odd events take place in this country that have caused mega lines. We're talking miles long lines at gas stations all across the country, or in specific spots. Every time Florida gets hit with a tornado or a hurricane, the first thing they're going to do is start panic buying gas, and right directly, I'm not sure if it's in front of that or behind that, I'm not even sure, but right in that same time frame, let's put it that way, the gas stations are all going to start price gouging customers. The price of gas is going to escalate to astronomical fees because, hey, everybody wants gas. And it's just ridiculous. So supply chains crack, right? And those cracks form immediately. Pharmacies get wiped out. Like, you know, I'm not going to lie, it's difficult to stockpile medications. You know, even if you do your absolute dead level best to spread your meds out and make them last as long, like, I've got to do something because, you know, maybe your insurance is crappy and don't cover your meds. I'm not going to say I know somebody like that, but I'm just going to say insurance company, and I'm going to say it out loud. I really don't care who likes it. I really don't. Insurance companies are a scam, and they're robbers, thieves, and liars, right? All of them. From car insurance, health insurance, life insurance, scams and robbers, right? And you pay your monthly premiums, and you pay your deductible. You work your rear end off to pay that $2,000 or $3,000 deductible, only to end up with some travesty hit in your life, and you got to go to the hospital, and you need your insurance to cover some stuff, and they're not going to cover squat. And then the insurance company, who aren't even doctors, will determine what meds you need. No, we're not paying for that. No, you don't need that. We'll give you either an alternative to that, or we just won't give you anything at all. Right? And somehow they're allowed to make those decisions on behalf of their clients. Like, wow. Let me get off that. Pharmacies get wiped out anyway during these panic buys because people want to stockpile their meds. We don't know how long the pandemic's going to last. We don't know how long this hurricane is, the devastation of this hurricane is going to last. So we want what we need stockpiled so we know we can survive. Prices jump, not even from scarcity of product, but from the demand shock. Excuse me. Businesses see sudden buying pressure, so prices go up. Restocking slows, shipping delays appear, and wholesales tighten inventory. Like, this is where your apocalyptic type existence begins. And this wouldn't be because the federal government went down in a corruption, thing. This is not even a federal government problem. This is a people problem. Like there's just a lot of things in life that are a people problem. The general public, if people would just get a hold of themselves, and act right, think right, slow down. Like I said, just slow down, breathe a little bit, let the heart rate drop a little bit, stop with the anxiety and, worrying, well, what am I going to do? Just take what you need, right? Let all your neighbors get what they need, and then look around and see who might be lacking, because again, banks aren't going to be able to supply every single ATM all at once, and grocery stores and what have you. So everybody just take what you need and then start looking around at your neighbors, start paying attention to what's going on, and start listening to what people are saying. And be like, I wish I could have gotten whatever at the grocery store, but every store we went to this week has been cleaned out. And then those of us that have can share. And the level of greed that takes place in this country on the lower levels, I'm not sharing what I got, and this is why you don't receive blessings. I don't care if you're a Christian or not. You're not gonna receive blessings of any kind if you're a selfish weasel that's not willing to share what you got. Well, you're not entitled to what I have. Nobody said anything about entitlement. We're talking about sharing and taking care of your fellow man. There's so much going on right now over, grocery prices and what have you. It's just like every day being online, I see garbage going on and the things that people say, right? And you just pay attention to what gets said. It's discouraging to think that there are that many people in this country that live and walk amongst us that you really wouldn't even know they're like this at work. But you get online and see them online and see just the horrific, terrible things that they say. And it's like, you're not even a good person at all, right? And those are the kind of people that are running off buying all the toilet paper by the truckloads and then selling it on eBay for, $500 a 12-pack or some stupid thing. Yeah. A government collapse isn't going to be the demise of this country. The people are. Anyway, prices jump, not from scarcity, but from demand shock. So businesses see sudden buying pressure, okay? So prices rise, restocking slows, shipping delays appears, and wholesalers tighten their inventory. This is where we see that price gouging begin. Okay. The government then has to step in to calm the markets. And now here's another battle that we're facing is everybody wants smaller government while simultaneously begging the federal government to take over and do everything. You have to make up your mind what it is you really want. And I don't care if you're on the left, right, or in the middle. It doesn't matter. This is where, like, again, I really don't care. I don't care. There's a lot of people out there that hate God, the Bible, whatever. But I said it before, I'll say it again. There's nothing in this life that can't be covered by something that's written in that book. Right? And we're in talking about, government having to step in and calm things down, and people can't make up their mind what they want. You either want small government or you want big government. And everyone's like, yeah, we want the government out of our living room, out of our pockets, and this, that, and the other thing. Well, the Bible specifically says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, right? You can't be a double-minded man or woman and really accomplish anything, be successful at anything. Actually, the Bible says you're like a ship tossed about on the ocean, just being tossed about by every wave that comes by as a double-minded person. So you have to decide, do you want big government or small government? And this is where you see emergency press conferences, Federal Reserve statements, trading halts, right? Stabilization messages and temporary liquidity injections and so on. And the goal is to slow the fear, because it becomes structural damage. Your fear is what's going to destroy this country, not the Epstein files. Right? We all want to see justice. We all want to see whoever's name on that list go to prison, right? That's what everybody's pushing for. And then we have to wonder just exactly how many of our politicians are on this list and what are the effects on our country going to be. But the effects on this country don't come from what happens in Washington, D.C. It comes from what happens right out here on the ground level between you and me. So the goal, again, is to slow down the fear before it becomes the structural damage. Market panic doesn't start with money, it starts with fear. So when a major shock hits the country, people panic before the economy does. Investors sell, and then algorithms react and markets swing. That panic then spreads to the regular people, and cash withdrawals, food runs, and gas lines start becoming an issue. And yeah, I know I'm over an hour. I'm just going to talk for a while. This is all new. I didn't set a time limit for myself on this, so I'll cut this off here shortly when I find a good break in my notes, because there's a lot of notes here, and I'm sure there'll be a good breaking point in here somewhere. So anyway, when a major shock hits the country, people panic before the economy does, okay? Businesses raise prices because demand explodes. Banks then struggle to keep up with the withdrawals, and supply chains crack under the pressure. None of this is because the system has actually failed. It's because people thought it might. And that's why market panic is so dangerous. Fear moves faster than facts, and the economy reacts to emotion long before reality. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like, what the heck is his name? Oh, wow. Ben Shapiro, thank you. But one of his favorite lines is, facts don't care about your feelings, right? Your feelings are what's going to get you in trouble. Your feelings are what your emotions draw off of, right? And you feed off of your own anxiety and fear, and you create the problems out of fear because you refuse to get a hold of yourself and just learn to breathe and manage life as it is, and be moderate in your dealings and so forth, right? So fear moves faster than facts, and the economy reacts to the emotion long before the reality of any of this ever will. Like you could literally bring out the Epstein files tomorrow and see exactly who's on it, and you could have 300 names of politicians on that list, and it wouldn't break this country. It would not, because protocols, as we're talking about, there are protocols in place that will see to it that even though some crazy stuff's going to happen, it won't break the country. Excuse me. But you will see things. Here we go, right? You'll see things like public unrest. Of course. We're talking about that right now. We're talking about public unrest. So, of course, because frankly, this is why the government doesn't tell us everything, right? And then we get angry about that because, hey, you're our representatives. You owe it to us to tell us everything. You work for us. But the government can't afford the luxury of telling us absolutely everything because people panic and do crazy stuff. 60, 70 years ago, the federal government couldn't afford the luxury of telling the American people there are aliens among us, right? Gosh, oh, Friday, now it's just a running joke. Now it's not even about mass panic. It's just about mass crowds of lunatics running out to Area 51 in campers, trying to overrun Area 51 just to catch a glimpse of an alien. But this is the craziness of humanity. and why the federal government can't afford the luxury of telling us everything, even though you feel like you're entitled to all that information because, hey, they work for us. And people in general are extremely emotionally charged and driven. Excuse me. So, public unrest and huge protests, gotta love them. Gotta love these people. Bless their peeping hearts, because let's face it, there's always a faction of society just itching for reasons to misbehave and cause a scene. It's no longer about having a piece of cardboard stapled to a stick. Now it's about setting fire to people's businesses, people's cars, graffitiing people's vehicles and homes and businesses, attacking law enforcement, attacking people in the streets, because people can't control themselves and behave themselves, right? And now the big thing on one of these apps, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say the name of it here because, I don't know how much trouble I can get in for that, but one of these apps, it's just never ending, all day long, every day, of people on the left calling people on the right Nazis and accusing the people on the right of Nazi-like behavior, making physical threats of not only physical harm, but demise, because they think that people on the right are Nazis and it's okay to essentially attack and or execute at will those that you deem to be Nazis, because you think that the insanity of people is just, it's out of this world, right? And this is why the government can't afford to tell us everything. And this is why the country will collapse upon itself. It won't even be the federal government that does us in. It's going to be ourselves. So, huge protests. And then media frenzy then falls in behind. I'll close this off here in just a minute. Media frenzy. And I mean, what can I say here, right? The media is likely the most fear-mongering group, right? And they're always looking for a story, always reaching for an angle, and always and forever reporting very liberally and never with the full scope, right? Because it's all about ratings. It's all about, somebody wants to get ahead somewhere along the line because there's somebody down here that wants to be an anchor person. So if I can be dramatic enough while I'm out here doing street level recordings, right, then I'll be behind the desk sooner or later. And then once I get there, then I can work for this other position. And it's all about making a name for myself. And if I can be dramatic enough, and while they're worrying so much about being dramatic enough to leave their mark in the world, they're causing mass panic and many other things because, and I'm just going to say this, because at this point, nobody's watching my stuff anyway, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Right, just report the news. If you're on a network news program, we're not talking about, nighttime talk show crap like, the Colbert Report or something else. We're talking about actual news network stuff. ABC, NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, Fox News, all of them, right? Just report the news. That's your job. Your opinion doesn't matter one iota. We don't really care about your opinion. That's not what you're paid for. You're paid to report the news. But the media loves to just build into things and cause this fear-mongering and to perpetuate the divide between people in the mannerisms by which they report. Possibly riots. I'm going to say possibly, but come on, in the last 20 years, how many riots can we count? I can tell you because I'm working on a different live stream for a week or so from now and garnering some information. I can actually tell you how many riots in the last 20 years. The insanity of people running out into the streets, wreaking havoc on communities. It's insane. Because, yeah, like I said, there's always that faction of society looking for any reason to wreak havoc, loot, burn, destroy. And quite frankly, always with a justification ready on hand. Because they were Nazis anyway, so I just graffitied their Tesla. Hey, the stupidity of it all was that we had, well, I say we, the country, had people out there vandalizing other people's vehicles, assuming them to be Nazis because they had a Tesla, and ended up a number of people getting on the news and on social media begging people, please don't destroy my car. I'm a liberal. I'm actually a liberal. Please don't hurt my car. And nobody listened, nobody cares, because all they saw was Tesla, so they just busting out windows, flattening people's tires, kicking their doors in, causing damage. Excuse me. Temporary global distrust. Let's move along, because I got to finish this up at some point tonight. Excuse me. So temporary global distrust, which stands to reason, because if we were to have mass allegations, charges, arrests, and so on, to be honest, I think the whole world at this point would be looking to cover their own backsides, right? So I'm not necessarily sure this Epstein Files thing is the one thing that the world is going to look at the U.S. and go, wow, they're crazy. We've already seen the downfall of one royal prince over this issue, right? From another country. And I have no doubt in my mind that this thing went globally. I mean, come on, man. Anybody who had that kind of money to be able to participate in this was likely a part of this. So, I guarantee you this wasn't. So, under whatever we could consider normal circumstances, when we're talking about government collapse, whether it's corruption or natural disasters or whatever, this is a very peculiar and a very particular circumstance, these Epstein files, okay? So I really don't think we have to worry too much about temporary global distrust on this one, because I think everybody's got somebody in their country that they're eyeballing for, like, I wonder if he's on the list. And it wouldn't surprise me if he is. You know what I'm saying? I think everybody's got dirty laundry. And I think everybody's got skeletons in their closets. And I think everybody's trying real hard to stay low key right now and hopefully not make, too many waves or draw too much attention to themselves on this Epstein Files thing, because, so I don't think we have to worry too much about temporary global distrust on this one. But it would stand to reason, right, if there were mass allegations. But because I don't think anyone would be immune if the fullness of the involvement in these files comes to light, it just wouldn't be surprising to me at all. And therefore, I don't think we have to worry about what the rest of the world would think of us if some of our people's names come up, because, hey, I am absolutely certain that we all know why everybody's being silent on this and pushing so hard to keep these files at bay, because darn well, not only do you not want to be caught, but you also know darn well you don't want anybody else that was there being caught either, because you don't know which one of you is the weak link. Which one of you is going to cave first and start giving out names, right? So, yeah, I mean, this is a very, very peculiar circumstance that we find ourselves in. We, the country, the world, so whoever's on this list, right? So, but we're talking about government continuity here, so let's, yeah. All right, I'm going to, let's see, what time is it? 10 after? Let me go a few more minutes. I got one whole viewer on my analytics here, so I can afford to put this up later, but you would not see the country fall to pieces, okay? Again, at least not in the movie sense. The U.S. system is built on the assumption that someday a huge portion of leadership would fail at once, okay? And that's why redundancies exist. What it looks like when a country falls apart and why it actually doesn't is because of these redundancies, these protocols, and these things that I don't know how often they practice these protocols. Supposedly on a regular basis or semi-regular basis. Like they're always planning and prepping for something to happen anyways. I mean, I don't know about underground cities per se, but I do know, back in the day when I was driving truck, I drove for 20 years. I have delivered to 3 different sets of underground facilities. I'm just going to call them facilities. And they go back in there miles upon miles of old mining caves that have been revamped and turned into storage facilities and what have you. And I've delivered to 3 of them. I know they exist. I've been in them. Kind of creepy, really, but cool at the same time. But the U.S., we don't, like I said, we don't know how often they've practiced these protocols, and just exactly how fast they're willing to dump the American general population when something happens. Right? They're ready to go underground in a heartbeat. Right? You can bank on that. I think the biggest concern we would ever have as a country, if something so disastrous were to happen that it would just gut our federal government, I think the biggest concern we would ever have would just be simply, okay, where do we go from here? I think a large portion of the U.S. would just simply be like, I don't really think I want a government right now. These people have been screwing us for so long. And then there's a very small portion of people that'd be like, but I think we need a government of some kind, and I think it would just be an issue of, okay, well, where do we go from here? Because they just dumped us, right? They're underground. They're living my best life, in their little cave dwellings, right? So I don't know. I wonder personally, if something that drastic were ever to happen in this country, I think our biggest worry would just simply be the American people. It would almost be like, I don't know, like a wild animal having been caged for so long that when you open the door, it's too afraid to go out, and it just creeps to the little exit of the carrier that it's in, and it slowly puts its paw on the grass and kind of peeks around like, do I want to go out? I think that's how the American population would be if something that dramatic were ever to happen in this country. I think we would just be like, is it okay to play? Can we go out? Are we allowed to see the sun now? So, I don't know. But at any rate, I'm going to... Let's outline this right here, and let's see here. Whoops. Where is there we go. We're going to outline. I don't know why that's not outlining. For Pete's sake. Hold on. Wow. There we go. All right. Let's get rid of that. Excuse me. We're going to go ahead and outline that and stop here for tonight. We'll pick this up another time. Probably tomorrow night. I will put something on Facebook to let you all know if I'm going to be on tomorrow night or not. It just depends on how my day develops after church tomorrow. But in the meantime, there we go. I think we'll just call it a day, right? And for anybody who gets to watch this after I post it onto my social media, I'll just say thank you for the view and ask you once again to just like and share, maybe hit the subscribe button and help me grow my YouTube channel. Outside of that, see you next time on the Midnight Watch as we continue, probably, like I said, probably tomorrow, on government continuity when bad things happen, right? Okay. So have a great evening.